And back home now, an infrastructure development company which looks to leverage local and international funds is being designed by the central bank in collaboration with the executive arm of government. The central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, made the announcement during the Monetary Policy Committee meeting, explaining that the special purpose vehicle will help in the rebuilding of critical infrastructure across the country. According to the CBN governor, the company, which has already secured the approval of the federal government, will be co-owned by the CBN, Africa Finance Corporation, and the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, with an initial 15 trillion naira to be committed to the project in the first 5 years of the scheme. But to look at this development with me this morning on the program is the director at the Center for Infrastructure Policy, Regulation and Advancement at the Lagos Business School, Dr. Bongo Adi. Good morning, Dr. Bongo. Thanks for joining us on the program.
For having me.
Now, let's begin the conversation right away now. Some research reports have shown that Nigeria requires a sustained expenditure of almost $14.2 billion per year, which is about 12% of the GDP to rebuild infrastructure. Could the CBN-led infrastructure company be the answer to this projection?
Yes, without any equivocation. I think that is the response that we've been waiting for all these years. And it is a good thing that the CBN has, taken the bull by the horn. So it's a welcome development in the infrastructure space. Yes, 14 billion required for sustained investment over the next couple of years for us to get to what we call infrastructure sustainability in Nigeria. And then what they have is 15 trillion naira, which translates to about $38 billion. So, which means we are actually 3 years, safe if we begin to invest in infrastructure. So that is a welcome development, and I think it's complementary to all the various schemes and efforts we've seen from the CBN intervening in the rail sector in the last couple of years. So this complements that and will bring the necessary synergy to ensure that rail development happens in the country.
Now, I would like to believe that there's an existing infrastructure financing framework for the country. Of course, we have the ICRC, the Infrastructure Bank of Nigeria, and a couple of other agencies. But tell us, what's the point of a CBN-led infrastructure company?
Okay, I think this is the CBN's role, and it's a strategic imperative to address shortcomings in the economy. The ICRC is actually a regulator, so the name is Infrastructure Concession and Regulatory Commission. So it regulates PPP, ensuring that the frameworks are adhered to and the operating guidelines are followed. So that is the role of the ICRC. So ICRC is not a funder of investment. It also identifies investment and helps in the preparation of projects, outline business cases and full business cases. So, and then also licensing, so to speak, authorizing PPPs. So it doesn't fund PPPs. Now, the Infrastructure Bank has been in existence. Remember, the Infrastructure Bank used to be the Urban Development Bank of Nigeria. So I think their mandate is more encompassing, more embracing. So this is not a replication of the job or the task of the mandate of the Infrastructure Bank. So the Infrastructure Bank will still be there. So just as we have different banks, commercial banks, different mortgage banks, different investment banks. So that has not limited the CBN intervention in the rail sector, because we know the various programs to support entrepreneurs, to support and promote agri-based entrepreneurship, AXME's program, anchor borrowers programs, and all of that. So those have not led to a duplication of the role of the banks. So this is an intervention in infrastructure which is necessary to ensure to really catalyze the kind of development that the CBN has started over the years by investing in the rail sector. So without this, we will have issues with logistics, because the real problem in Nigeria right now is infrastructure. Now, having invested heavily in the rail sector, we expect that in the next couple of years, in the short to medium term, those investments will begin to yield fruit. And as they begin to come on stream, it is important that evacuation be guaranteed, and which will be provided by the infrastructure transportation especially, and of course power and investment in other infrastructure asset classes. So that is very important. It's very critical. It's not a duplication of function, and I don't think it is. It takes out the infrastructure bank and other investment in infrastructure. In fact, we can do with any help that we can get right now.
But what about the monetary and fiscal authorities? Don't you think that this would amount to a duplication of functions between them?
No, with the monetary and fiscal authorities, no. And again, I mean, this debate has been on because in the past, the CBN has been criticized for, interfering in the markets, by kind of replicating the functions and the role of commercial entities, especially the banks. So some people see that as necessary. But if you look at it, one of the principles of economics is that government can also improve the market outcome. The market is not always, to be trusted to ensure that the goods are delivered, supply and demand, are at efficient levels. So there are times what we call a situation of market failure. So the only way you can correct such market failure, and we have predominant market failure in Nigeria in every sector, in every space. So requiring governments to really play that key role of interventionist policies to ensure that those failures are somehow obviated. So that is the role of the central bank, and I think that is also in their operating mandates. So they are not going outside the guidelines, they're not going outside their authorizing mandates. So they are acting within the limit of what is provided for them all over the world. So, it is not a duplication function. And in terms of monetary policy, I think it's also consistent with ensuring that the monetary policy targets are met. To give you an example, the challenge of so many emerging and developing economies in the third world countries right now is inflation. Okay, because you have seen interventions to ensure that people survive the lockdown, the pandemic. Okay, that has some inflationary push-ups in so many countries. In countries that have diversified economies, the inflationary pressure wouldn't be that much. But here, because supply will kind of struggle to meet demand. And as a result, we have some inflationary push. So without the diversification of the economy, without us having a real investment in infrastructure, you can see that we will really have some major constraints when it comes to inflation. And that has implications for our exchange rate, our purchasing power, and of course, job creation over the longer term.
Now, President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday sent the 2021-2023 MTEF document to the National Assembly for passage. Given the 5-year outlook for the initial run of the company, do you foresee a situation where the capital projects will subsequently be handled by this infrastructure development company?
Well, that's again, okay. Now I think I get what the question you asked earlier, which is about the monetary and fiscal policy. So let's look at the fiscal policy framework, the budgetary system, the provision for capital expenditure. Now, this again is a different thing. Again, so this is an intervention, okay, which has been expected since we had the constitution or the formation of the Sovereign Investment Authority, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So everybody had thought that with the establishment of the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority that would be replicating the scenario that we found in countries like Saudi Arabia, where they use their sovereign wealth funds to really intervene vigorously in infrastructure. So, but that didn't happen. But I think right now the CBN coming in will actually support, because again, the fund is to come from African Finance Corporation, the NSIA, okay, and then managed by an independent infrastructure investment fund manager. So, which is to actually, so it's a different package, the different setting altogether from the provisions of the capital budget. So the capital budget will still go on. But I think for efficiency, since we are now seeing that government is moving towards privatization, because when you have a fund, you will be interested in the optimization of that fund, you'll be interested in the yield. So it will not just be a pork barrel funding. So I just hope, I think it will be our hope that the capital expenditure framework could be managed under this, because that's what everybody has been championing over the years, that we want to see more increase private sector intervention, private sector processes in the business of infrastructure provision, because that is the only way to ensure efficiency. So we'll be preaching the gospel of PPPs over the years as well. So we are now beginning to see that the necessary framework, the fundamental requirements are now gradually being met with the establishment of this fund. So if it comes on stream, we know that PPPs will be unlocked, and then that means we're bringing private sector expertise into the delivery of infrastructure in Nigeria. So that is a welcome development, actually. So I don't see any problem between that and the capital budgeting. If, in fact, the capital budgeting could just be managed through that, I think Nigerians will be happier for that.
Now, when we talk about the focus of the company, Dr. Adi, from the snippets that we've received so far, it looks like the firm will look more on the transportation end of the agriculture value chain as opposed to other critical areas of infrastructure demands.
Yes. Now, when we talk about production, okay, in economics, we talk about the production function. So the most important enabler of productivity in any economy are two, okay? The main indirect inputs to production, they are energy, power, and transportation. So power has been taken care of by the current administration. So we've seen the presidential initiative in the power sector. Again, that's purely privatization, because they're bringing in this company from Germany that's taking care of a lot of things in the power sector. So I've listened to the president advisor, talking about that. So I think that has been taken care of. Now, what is left is transportation. So yes, it's actually an excellent decision to tackle transportation issue, because logistics is a major problem, just as I said earlier. So with the investment, the ramping up of investment in agriculture, in the rice sector, manufacturing, the support that the CBN has unleashed over the years. So it's only a matter of time before we begin to see results coming up. And then when that begins to happen, so the next constraint will be logistics. So if we do not address the logistical issues, which is what the transportation focus is supposed to address. So if we don't do that now, then that will still not help. So I think it's a right focus. So we've addressed power. Now, with the infrastructure fund, we're addressing transportation. So I think we are getting it right here.
And talking about the fund now, when you look at the value committed toward the project, would you say it's too ambitious or inadequate?
Well, you mentioned earlier that the estimate is that we need $14 billion per annum to get our infrastructure stock up. Right now, our infrastructure stock, when you value all the infrastructure assets in Nigeria, it's just about 20 to 30% of the GDP. Okay, so that is nowhere near sustainability, which the World Bank recommends to be 70%. So the countries in Africa that have, South Africa has the infrastructure stock as 80% of their GDP. The Great Britain is about 70%. America is actually below, about 60%. So we are far away, 20% to 20 to 30% of the GDP. So is there any investments that will be, more than enough? I don't think so. So we have 14 billion, and then we have 30.7 billion projected to be spent at 15 trillion naira over the next 5 years. So we are not yet there, because 14 billion by 5. So we will be, looking at more like 60 billion or something like that, or more than that. So, but we only have 38. So it's a step in the right direction. So I think we still need to ramp it up, but it's a good start.
Now, the project is an ownership alliance between the CBN, the AFC, and the NSIA, even though it's been run by an independent infrastructure fund manager. But do you see that activating some foreign exchange inflows?
Of course. Nigeria, despite everything that's happened to us, everybody sees Nigeria as a potential investment. So, look at the population alone, the GDP of the country. So let's consider the potential GDP. growth rate. So our potential is, supposing that we put everything we have to work, the potential GDP of this country is about 7% per annum. So we are still doing below that. So everybody sees that. Everybody knows the capacity inherent in this country, the potential is latent in it. And then they know that it requires just a little to activate all that. Even as we speak now, return to investment in Nigeria is still higher compared to other countries in the world. So everybody wants to come to Nigeria. All we care about is to have foreign direct investment. So we will not be worrying about foreign exchange, issues. So if we have the infrastructure, we will produce. Enough. Well, let's produce enough for our domestic market first. So if we're able to meet the domestic demand, that's huge. And we wouldn't be worrying about exchange rates in the interim. So it's not something that I think we should be concerned about.
Dr. Adi, what would you like to see integrated in the implementation plans of this project?
Okay, I think that's where the devil is in the details. Okay, so I'm smiling because, we have a problem in developing countries, especially in Nigeria. What I call, I'm borrowing from researchers, what they call isomorphic mimicry. So we like to replicate other things that happen in other places without putting in the real, human, the people issues dealing with it. Because what we have in Nigeria mainly is not the lack of frameworks, it's not the lack of, so-called institutions, but what we have, the lack of the right mindset, the right people who have the right ethical values to make sure that they are committed, conscientiously to the dictates of things. So, but you could see what is happening going on with the FCC, with NDDC. So that tells you that it's not about building structures. It's not about creating units. It's about the people. So what I would like to see would be, the recruitment of very credible people who have very sound ethical track record. And then the system should be imbued with transparency and accountability from the start, so that everything will be clear to everybody. Because the challenge that we have in Nigeria is the lack of transparency. So, and that is what creates room for corruption. So we don't want to see that happen. We don't want to hear stories tomorrow. So let us start by building in the necessary framework for accountability and transparency within the system.
The Director at the Center for Infrastructure, Policy Regulation and Advancement at the Lagos Business School, Dr. Bongo Adi, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.